Good afternoon. State Representative John Yates, Chairman of the Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee, and we're so pleased today to have some of my favorite people here, Commissioner Wheeler and his sidekick, Mr. Cook, and anybody else you want to introduce for us?
Dan Holtz,
yeah.
Commissioner for Administration.
Okay.
Rick Ram, Director of Operations.
All right. Very good. My old General Patton said, "Don't apologize, it's a sign of weakness," so I won't apologize for those malcontents who didn't make it yet. But we've been kicking around up here. We thought maybe we might pass a resolution next year, a new rule that said if you don't attend 2 meetings or something, we'll kick you out. But I feel it's kind of bad because about the ones that's missing asked to get on the committee. So it's such a fine committee. Maybe they thought it's fine because you don't have to attend. But anyway, Mr. Commissioner, just start off any way you want to, and I guess we've kicked around up here. We could go without a quorum. Quorums are normally 4, but since it's an informational thing, we can just you just tell us whatever's on your mind, and I always look forward to your presentations.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I want to thank each of you for what you continue to do to help the veterans of Georgia.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they're going to look for you on the camera, so they won't see your bright, smiley face over there. So, and everybody who's tuning in.
Okay, we got it. Good, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I want to tell you how much we appreciate what you have done and continue to do to help the veterans of Georgia and their dependents, the people that kept this country free, and the young men and women that are there now fighting for us to make sure that we remain free. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you, and not only the committee, but I'd like to present to you something that General MacArthur, Douglas MacArthur, had on his wall in his office in Tokyo, and I want to present it to you. He had it framed and was on his wall, and this is a direct copy of it, photostat, and it tells you that nobody grows old by merely living a number of years. People grow old only by deserting their ideals and so on, and it's the best written I've ever seen on age. And you and I being World War II veterans, it makes us feel better to know that you don't ever get old. And we're both young. And I
appreciate that. I read the General's book, American Caesar, and it was very interesting. And I guess you had my age in mind when you decided to present that, I expect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It'll go on my museum wall down in room 217.
We have some pictures and slides to show you and other members of the committee today about what we are trying to do in Georgia to make sure that we take care of these young men and women who have risked their lives for our defense of this great country.
Thank you.
Some of the things we do, we'll show you the pictures of it. One in particular I want you to look at are that we have 2 state cemeteries in Georgia, one in Milledgeville and one in Glenville near Fort Stewart. We are very proud of the fact that we have the most beautiful chapel of any state in the Union. And I was visited recently by the head of Arlington National Cemetery who heard about it. He came all the way from Washington down to Milledgeville, looked at it, and came back by my office and said, "I'm envious of Georgia, what a beautiful chapel you have. We have stained glass windows pointing up as an arrow, telling you it's cooler up there, and that's the direction you ought to be headed, up above." And we are very proud of our 2 cemeteries. We also operate a large nursing home in Milledgeville and also one in Augusta. So operated one in Augusta, probably you see more doctors there than you see in a hospital because the Medical College of Georgia trains their physicians there, and you see a lot of doctors and a lot of nurses that are used We'll use that facility for training, and it's probably the best equipped nursing home in America. We also are responsible for all educational benefits in Georgia, seeing that the schools in Georgia, all of them, including the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech and others, approved by our state approval agency before they can train any veteran. And we have a close relationship with all the schools in Georgia and also our educational programs. All of that is reimbursed by the federal government, that division, education division. Then we have our claims staff located at the VA regional office, where we present claims on behalf of veterans and their dependents. We have 48 field offices located around the state that veterans can go to and get assistance, because no veterans benefit is automatic. You got to apply for it, and you got to know about it, and that's the reason we are able to bring more money, about $3 billion a year we bring into the state, help assist in bringing into the state of Georgia. We bring in more money into Georgia than states that have more veterans than we do. And that indicates that our field operations are doing a good job. I'll sit down now, but I'm available for any questions. But we'd like to show you some of these facilities that we operate over the state of Georgia, and what we're trying to do to see that the veteran of Georgia get everything they're entitled to and assist them in getting it and their dependents. And Tom Cook will show you the slides and make comments, and if you have any questions, stop us.
On my way over here, a man had visited the one up in North Georgia and told me how impressed he was with the cemetery there.
It's beautiful. And the one up in, that's federal.
I had the good fortune of my second cousin, B.C. Yates, used to run the one up at Kennesaw years ago.
That's a beautiful place. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Commissioner and Chairman Yates, members of the committee. It is my privilege and honor to be here today to cover some of what our program is all about, and we're very excited about the work that we do and the quality and the veterans that we reach. They've already been introduced, but I wanted to mention that Dan Holtz, our Assistant Commissioner for Administration, Health, and Contracting, is here. Memorials, I'm sorry. One of these days I'll get the whole title correct. But is here, and of course I'll be covering his area too, but all of the budget and all of the cemeteries and nursing homes come under him. We also have Rick Graham, who is our Director of Operations and runs our personnel business, so for questions they are certainly available.
Okay.
And as you know, the Commissioner's been with the department a good long while, and there's a really good article, I don't know if you saw it in Sunday's paper, on Commissioner Wheeler.
I heard about it, but the Atlanta Journal no longer sends stuff down to Spalding County, so a friend of mine is going to bring it to me.
Okay, I was going to say we can get you all a copy of it if you wish, but it's a really good article, very, very well done. And certainly Commissioner and his leadership that he's provided for the department provides a continuity in Georgia that no other states have. Their commissioners or directors come and go with the political wind and climate, but Commissioner Wheeler's been here, and because of that, Georgia leads the way in so many areas, and we're very, very fortunate and blessed because of that.
That's what you get by doing a good job, huh?
That's right. As you know, we have overseen by a Veteran Service Board. It's almost biblical in the sense, 7 members with 7-year terms, and they, of course, every 4 years elect a commissioner, and commissioners manage to keep them headed in the right direction all these years. That just shows our organization, and all of the field offices are under my jurisdiction, basically nursing homes, cemeteries, and all of the budget and operations are under Dan Holtz. And then we have our education and training division and our public information division.
We're going to cut on the lights a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. The VA's mission since time, or based upon Abraham Lincoln's address in terms of caring for those who had borne the battle, the widow and the orphans, and certainly our mission is based upon that in terms of serving those who have served. I want to point out that the veteran population of Georgia is now over 772,000 and rising. And I emphasize and rising because the VA's prediction based upon the 2000 census was that the veteran population would decline. That is not happening because of retirees moving south and moving into Georgia, and of course the global war on terror and lots of other reasons. The veteran population has continued to rise, and I believe will continue to rise. This slide is significant because it shows that because of the service that we provide to our veterans in the state of Georgia, that the compensation and pension I would call the bread and butter of the VA benefits, and what our personnel spend the majority of the time doing is assisting veterans in obtaining those service-connected related disability compensation awards and the pension awards that brings into the Georgia economy $1,638 million plus dollars in FY09, and the total expenditure brought into the Georgia economy is over $3 billion. Very, very significant. And it's all the more significant when you compare it with other states. And what I want to emphasize here is that you see that states with a larger veteran population, take, for example, Illinois, has 30,000 more veterans, but with compensation and pension benefits that they bring in to their economy is $658 million less than what comes into the Georgia economy, and $326 million less in terms of total expenditure. Then when you look at Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania I think is significant because they have 222,000 more veterans than what Georgia does. But even though they have 222,000 more veterans, that in terms of their compensation and pension benefits, that they are $155 million less than what the state of Georgia is. They are higher in terms of total expenditure with $660 million, but when you or more than Georgia, but when you factor in the higher veteran population, in fact they have a lot of large contract awards, then we're still doing it extremely well. Then you look at another southern state, the state of Virginia, and you see that they have 46,000 more veterans, but 61 million less in terms of the compensation and pension benefits that come in, and 239 million less in terms of the total expenditure. So I mentioned these figures to point out that I believe that it is a reflection of the quality of outreach and service that is provided by our department under Commissioner Wheeler's leadership that is responsible for the difference in those figures, because we do a tremendously good job of taking care of our veterans and ensuring that they had the benefits that they are entitled to. And it does make a difference, makes a monetary difference in terms of the total receipts coming into the economy. Our priorities for the last year have been related first to the obtaining a commissary at Dobbins Air Reserve Base that would be present once the commissaries in the area are closed related to the BRAC closure in 2011. Of course, Fort Gillem, Fort McPherson, and the commissary in Athens at the Naval School will be closed come 2011. And that would leave, if we didn't get one approved, that would leave all of the greater Atlanta area, northwest Georgia, and Athens area without a commissary. And if you've had any association at all with the Atlanta VA Medical Center, you're well aware of the extremely crowded parking conditions on the one hand and the patient load on the other, that it is a unmanageable situation. They are making strides towards solving part of it, but that's where the commissioners desire to push towards a hospital or a clinic in Fort McPherson, again, once the BRAC closure takes place. And also one of the priorities was to obtain a community-based outpatient clinic in Statesboro, and the bridge between the Atlanta VA Medical Center and Atlanta VA Regional Office, and the renovations that take place at the Atlanta VA Medical Center.
We wrote some letters on that in the past, but did we ever make a resolution, urgent resolution, anything on that? Do you remember?
I do not believe that we did.
Okay.
I don't recall one. I know we talked about it, but I don't think that.
You might give us some information. We might consider doing that.
Okay. Yes, sir. We can look at that. Let's look at some of the accomplishments that may tailor it somewhat. Those were our goals, and the accomplishments of what has transpired over the past year. In September, the DOD Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness did approve building a commissary at Dobbins Air Reserve Base in Marietta. So that approval is there. The question is, when are they going to build the thing? And then that becomes either it's under the military construction program that it would be as late as 2015 before they would start, or if a $17 million plus up to the surcharge account of DECA comes out of the U.S. Congress, out of the Appropriations Committee there, then they can begin construction this fall. So that's where we're pushing now. In fact, Commissioner's written to Congressman Sanford Bishop and Congressman Jack Kingston, because they're both on the House Appropriations Committee, to get this $17 million plus up approved, and for it to get out of the Appropriations Committee plus up to the surcharge account of DECA. If that happens, then construction could begin this fall, and it's conceivable that it would be open or close to being open by the time that the commissary are closed in 2011.
What's the probability of that?
Probability? Well, we'd like to think it's close to 100%. We don't know. We believe that from what we have found out from Congressman Gingrich's office and also Senator Isaacson's office, that they seem very positive about it. I don't know that I could put a numerical percentage on it, but they are talking like this can happen. So we feel confident about it, and we like to think positive. And it most certainly is the right thing to do, because it's otherwise we're looking at a gap of several years before they can even begin construction of a commissary, which would leave the whole area.
Cobb County gave us $1 million for it.
Right, Cobb County has already put on the table $1 million to fund the commissary. So we feel very good about this initiative and hope that it will come to pass. Also, in August of last year, DOD and VA agreed to utilize the Fort McPherson Medical Center for VA to take it over. And what they are pushing toward is what they've termed a health care center, which is a new term or new critter of sorts, and it's going to involve moving a number of the specialty clinics from the Atlanta VA Medical Center to this health care center on the premises that's now Fort McPherson, and providing some outpatient surgery, a number of different specialty clinics, and care. So that we believe that will relieve a lot of the problem from the Atlanta VA Medical Center, because their patient load has increased as a result of the number of community-based outpatient clinics that we have in the area, most recently the one in Union that opened up, that while that is good on the one hand, that they refer their specialty care to Atlanta VA Medical Center for treatment. So the more clinics we have, the greater the specialty care workload at the Atlanta VA. So this will help resolve a lot of that problem, we believe, once this takes place. VA has also approved community-based outpatient clinics, not only for Statesboro, but for Hinesville, Brunswick, Blairsville, and Milledgeville. And some of how this happened, Commissioner Wheeler, about this time of the year, it might have been in late February of last year, met with VA Secretary Shinseki over at the Atlanta VA Regional Office and discussed a number of these issues. And about a week after that meeting, that Mr. Larry Bureau, Division 7 Southeast Network Director for the VA Medical Program, came to meet with the Commissioner and told him that these clinics are going to be open. So we feel like that Commissioner's meeting with the Secretary Shinseki certainly bore fruit. And as you know, the clinic in Union opened this past September, along with the announcement in March of last year that Mr. Bureau brought to us. He announced that not only would there be these Statesboro and the other clinics, but that as a result of a grant that has been given from a widow's estate, that what they're terming a mega clinic will be opening in the Carrollton area. Now the yes, sir. That all VA will have to fund will be the operations of that clinic. That estate has made this possible. A community-based outpatient clinic is about 10,000 square feet. This one may be anywhere from 35,000 to 40 or 45,000 square feet. So it also will relieve some of the congestion from the Atlanta VA Medical Center, because there will be a number of different specialty clinics as well as the primary care that will be located in this clinic in Carrollton. A hospital without beds, Commissioner says. That's what it'll be. So we're excited about that development. We also believe that plans are in the works for a clinic in Waycross and one in Tifton. So on the horizon, in terms of the accessibility for our veterans, not only in the Atlanta area, but in the rural areas throughout Georgia, is going to improve significantly. We're very pleased with that. VA's also approved expanding the Lawrenceville and Oakwood clinics, that they are currently about 10,000 feet, but growing those clinics to bring more capability for the care that they can provide, as well as the request in now for approval for the one in Smyrna. And then another development that rather surprised us is that along with this health care center that's going to be at Fort McPherson on those premises, that they are planning a women's wellness specialty care center, a mega lease, which also will be I haven't seen the square footage of that, but it's going to be pretty large and devoted exclusively to women's health care issues. And it'll be somewhere in the Atlanta area. Will it be Fort McPherson? I don't know, but that too is in the works. And as you know, that over time the percentage of women veterans has steadily increased, and therefore along with that increase, the requirement for providing proper care for our women veterans and the special needs that they have, that this is being addressed. The pedestrian bridge between the Atlanta VA Medical Center and the regional office will be complete. If you've been over there, it's about 3/4 of the way across right now, and it's looking like by August that will be completed, and no longer will veterans have to worry about negotiating that hill between the medical center and the VA regional office. They can go right across a covered, air-conditioned walkway. And this has been the Commissioner's vision for some time now, and it's about to become a reality to make it truly one VA between the regional office and the medical center. And we're looking forward to that happening. And they've also funded the renovation of the patient wards, and the Atlanta VA Medical Center in that regard will be one of the nicest in the VA system, and rank right up there with civilian private hospitals as well. In terms of our programs, we have every October, late October, the Governor's annual Veterans Day proclamation signing ceremony, and this past one was October the 29th. That'll be coming up again, and we certainly encourage you to put that on your calendar. It's always a big event and an important one for our veterans. Our supermarket, as you know, is an annual event. This past one was held in Griffin. We were very pleased with the outcome of that, and we'll be picking another location for one this year. This was our 44th one. We had about 45 different state and federal agencies there, and Chairman Yates, you were there most of the day for that event. We had 55 different tables and booths set up in the National Guard Armory there, and over 3,000 veterans and family members came through that day. So it's a very, very successful event. We look forward to doing it again. Coming up on March the 30th, and I emphasize the 30th because in your packet it's got the 20th, so if you'd mark through that too and put a 3 on there. It's Tuesday, March the 30th at 10:30. Governor Perdue's going to present a Vietnam Veterans Proclamation to Mr. Wayne Watkins, who is the president of the Vietnam Veterans Group. And we look forward to that event. So if you could please put it on your calendar. We accomplish our mission through our main ones through the field operations and through the administration division, our education and training division. In field operations, our field offices, we have picked up on the governor's initiative in terms of courteous service to ensure that the service that we provide to our veterans is both courteous and professional at all times. That's very, very important and adds to the special touch that we provide to the veterans that we serve. We emphasize that we provide free representation to veterans and claimants. And the free part of it, attorneys are getting more and more in the act in terms of veterans' claims and care, but they, of course, charge a fee for that. Most of them do, some pro bono. But our representation for veterans is free, regardless of how much their award turns out to be, that we are just glad that we're able to help them to obtain the benefits that they so richly deserve. Yes, sir.
How, right now, as far as, and I know the bar is working has had a project working on representation. How is that coming along? And right now, if you would say, what would be the need in the state for lawyers who have not specialized necessarily in it, but have a good understanding of this area?
Well, I guess the answer to that is that there are veterans there that for one reason or the other feel like that they need representation by an attorney and seek representation in that regard. So for those who had that need, then we believe that they should have that right and opportunity, and they can, and they do make a fee arrangement agreement with the VA regional office in terms of negotiating the actual charge. But some either for whatever reason they're not satisfied with, it could be our department or another veteran service organization or representation, and want representation from an attorney, or it could be just from the get-go that they would prefer to be represented by an attorney. And certainly with the workload that we have, we represent every veteran we can, do the best we possibly can, but the fact of the matter is the workload is increasing for everybody, so there's plenty enough out there to however the veterans are served, whether it's from one of our representatives or from an attorney, just so their needs are met and they are taken care of. That's what's most important. And if they, in their own mind, for whatever reason, want to be represented by an attorney, then that's fine. Should have that right. Yes, sir. I put the court analogy there because it is important, even though that VA by law and by mindset most of the time anyway is non-adversarial, that still yet in terms of a veteran dealing with the VA directly without representation, it doesn't make any more sense to me than it would that if you go into the courtroom, most people who go to court know that they need a representation. They get an attorney to represent them. They don't go try to represent themselves in court. I believe the same principle applies in terms of dealing with VA benefits, that if you represent yourself, then you're sort of represented by a fool in a sense, because veterans need to be represented by somebody that knows what they're doing, whether it's one of our folks or an attorney or somebody that understands VA law and can help them navigate the difficult streams of the process and not be kept in the dark, and because it can be a very frustrating and time-consuming process. It's bad enough even best casing it, but then when you throw in mistakes made because you didn't do it right to begin with, then it makes it even worse. And we a lot of times get veterans in that category by the time they have bounced around for several years and gotten frustrated and been out of shape. Then they finally realize that they need to be represented by somebody and seek a representation. Of course, we take them whatever stage we can get them along the way, but preferably at the beginning, because that's the best way to provide the assistance and the help. Our personnel are accredited by all of the service organizations that appear on that slide, which is a good number. The bulk of them probably are from the state of Georgia and the American Legion and the VFW, but they have filed a power of attorney with, say, the Fleet Reserve Association, then we're the ones that will represent them. So the actual form 2122, if you will, that's in the VA file folder, it might show a retired enlisted association, but they would be represented by the same person in our department. That doesn't vary with the POA. As the commissioners emphasized, we have 48 offices throughout the state. That's a little busy of a slide, but those red stars show the spread. We try to make them as accessible as possible for our veterans throughout the entire state. We have attractive field offices that are, in most cases, easy for the veterans to find. This one happens to be located in our nursing home in Augusta. That's Beverly Floyd, our manager of that office.
Do you base those locations on the basis of population, territory, or both?
It's been based on, I guess, historically the population and the distance that veterans have to travel. I know the commissioner said at one time there were 100 offices within the state, but due to budget cuts over time, they had to cut back. But we've tried to maintain, in terms of the accessibility factor for our veterans, to not have to travel long distances.
Don't the offices?
Right, we have
offices travel around, don't they?
Right, the itinerant service that is provided from one office to another location, maybe weekly or biweekly or monthly, that we try to reach out in that sense as well. We also have offices located in our VA medical centers. This is a picture of our one in Atlanta, and our manager of that office, Marilyn Ferguson, I want to emphasize that she won one of the governor's customer service awards. We're very proud of her. She is a tremendous person, and
She can get more done than the director.
the commissioner says she can get more done than the director. In many ways, that is true. To me, it's like she's the closest thing that I've ever seen to somebody that has a magic wand and that can go around and kaboom. If it can be done, Marilyn Ferguson can get it done.
They go in mad and come out smiling.
Go in mad and come out smiling. They sure do. We also have an office located in the Augusta VA Medical Center, Charlie Norwood Center, as well as the one in Dublin. And then we have a large staff co-located with the Atlanta VA Regional Office. Our claims division is located there. We have 9 claims counselors and 4 secretaries in that office. They do not only the work that's provided by our field office personnel, but they also have the specialty of representing veterans with their appellate process, from filing a notice of disagreement all the way through to dealing with the Board of Veterans Appeals. And they represent veterans in the hearings, local hearings with the decision review officers there at the regional office, and also before the judges from the Board of Veterans Appeals. They have 2 judges that come down almost monthly now because they're trying to reduce their appellate backlog, that they have a travel board that comes down, and our folks are at the claims division represent the veterans before the judges at the BVA. They also have video teleconference hearings that they can conduct. So they have quite a heavy workload doing all of that. In addition, our personnel, both at claims and throughout the state, because of the deployments that have taken place with our National Guard and Reserve forces that are there for the pre-deployment activities and the post-deployment activities. They're there before they leave. They're there when they come back to help them obtain the benefits once they do get back that they are entitled to. And before they go, to let them know we're going to be both supporting them, praying for them, and be here for them when they get back home. They also conduct the TAP briefings, transition assistance briefings, at Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, at Fort Stewart, in different locations, pre-retirement briefings at Fort McPherson, the different military installations, and all sorts of other programs with nursing homes, assisted living, churches, civic organizations, veteran service organizations in the evenings and on the weekends. So,
do you have a program of getting information to these returning veterans as soon as they get back? Or?
We do, yes, sir. We're working closely with the National Guard, with the Yellow Ribbon program, and we're there along with the folks from the VA to be sure that they are taken care of. We're there. We try to be there when they fly in to just express our appreciation on behalf of the Commissioner and our department for what they have done, or if they're getting ready to fly out, what they're about to do, and be here when they get back. But then when they have their demobilization activities, that we're there to work with them with their claims in depth. So all that say that the veteran population's increasing, the workload is increasing. We saw the need, and so did the legislature a couple of years ago, to plus up our department. We got 6 different field service officer positions approved, 2 at in the claims division that we've been unable to fill those because once the economy took a nosedive, then that kind of put us in a inability to fill those positions. But our folks are doing, I believe, a remarkable job given the fact that the workload is continuing to increase, and we do a superb job. We have different state benefits with the free driver's license, which gets them in the door. It's actually how once I retired from the military, I went to our office in Griffin to get my certificate to take to get my free driver's license. And that's how I learned not only about the veterans benefits, about this department and what they do, and here I am today. But that's the way many of our veterans come in the door for that driver's license entitlement. Our specialty tags, like for retired personnel, military personnel, business license tax exemption, homestead tax exemption for our 100% service-connected veterans, the park reduction fee, the free hunting and fishing license for the 100% folks, and other state benefits that are there. Then we have, of course, our nursing home care and veteran cemetery care in Augusta and Milledgeville, with the nursing homes in Glenville and Milledgeville with the cemeteries. Our nursing home in Augusta, which is known locally as the Blue Goose, routine operations there continuing even with the budget cuts. The average patient load right now is at 174, and there's the renovation project that's on schedule and continuing. The Augusta nursing home is in an almost ideal location because it's directly across the street from the VA Medical Center and the Medical College of Georgia, and because of that gets a lot of our nursing home patients receive a lot of medical care because of the training that takes place through the Medical College of Georgia and the relationship there. The mission is the same, I believe, for both Augusta and Milledgeville, as such, to help improve their health and reduce the burden of illness. The reality of the matter is that we are dealing with an aging process that does not always decline. That's going to get worse, and then, therefore, to provide as high of a level of care and compassionate level of care as we possibly can for all of our veterans. The patient care team, yes.
Just quickly, we went over this, I think, a good bit in appropriations, but I want to just be clear. The qualifications for being able to go into one of the state nursing homes for a veteran is what?
You want to address that?
The veteran has to be a veteran who served during a time of war as determined by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs or the state of Georgia. There is a statute on the books that takes the period from 1955 to 1954 to 1962, when Vietnam kicked off, and declared that entire period as Cold War. And so for purposes of admission to a state veterans home, that period is considered a time of wartime. That's the first criteria. You must have served during a period of wartime. The second criteria is that you must have been a resident of Georgia for 5 years immediately prior to applying for admission. If you meet those two criteria, you're eligible for admission to the home.
That's it.
That's it.
And just sort of you rank where, I mean, so let's just use an
It's
example.
a first come, first served basis. The VA has to approve the admission, but once the admission has been approved and there's a bed available, it's on a first come, first served basis.
Okay.
Now, part of what happens sometimes with some of the individuals who have applied for admission, when the bed then becomes available, they may ask to defer the actual admission to a later date because they're not quite ready yet, but they want to have the approval there so that when they are ready to go in and a bed is available, they can do it.
Okay. But there's no, like, combat injury, you jumped up the list. You could, so you, in essence, you could have a Congressional Medal of Honor winner who served in a wartime, who was injured, or by the time he gets there, if he's number 80 on the list, he'll stay number 80 on the list until he goes to number 1 on the list.
Right.
And we do not do any Medicare, Medicaid, we do not any means testing or anything at all.
No, sir, we do not.
So basically, the luck of the draw, you either get free, for the most part, free nursing home care based on where you are on the list. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be a fair statement, yes. And right now, our waiting list for Milledgeville is somewhere around 20 on that list. and I believe the list at Augusta has around 37 on it.
Do you think that would be higher if people knew that it's basically free?
I think they, to the extent that we've been able to put the word out, the people do know it is no cost.
Okay. All right. I thank you for your
Sure.
time.
And in both nursing homes, we have a multidisciplinary team of professionals that provide the care for our veterans on all levels. And with the rehabilitation that takes place, which they work on that, and they work closely, of course, with the attending physicians. And it's not just the care in a medical environment, if you will. There are all sorts of activities that take place at both homes to help the morale and the spirit of our veterans, along with the Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies. Lots of cookouts that take place, bookmobiles that come in to meet their reading needs, more cookouts. This getting in the time of the year where that's fun and enjoyable. Have very nice setting outside where they can meet and catch up with their family and friends. All sorts of involvement from the community organizations and leadership, both civilian and military, and visits from basketball teams and different groups that come in. And that is true of both Augusta and Milledgeville. The home in Milledgeville's got a much larger facility, different buildings there. Patient load is also higher, currently at 285. A couple of projects are going on there in the Vinson building and the Wood building. And as I mentioned earlier, the VA is planning to open a full-time community-based outpatient clinic there that's going to be plussed up, I believe, by $330,000 from the state budget. Capital improvement from the state budget to assist the VA with that outpatient clinic, which of course will be available not just for nursing home veterans, but for all veterans in the Milledgeville area.
When was the $330,000 appropriated?
Last year.
Was it under last year?
Yes, sir.
Is it still pending payment, or are we already spent it?
We are in the process of moving that project forward, so it's underway.
Okay, so are we talking 9 or 10 budget? We're talking the 10 budget, the 09? Okay.
Actually,
Oh, would that be the 10?
the bonds were sold in, I guess it would be FY10 construction capital improvement. The bonds were sold early last summer.
Okay, it's 10.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Then turning our attention to the cemeteries, of course, the one in Milledgeville was the first one, dedicated in 2001. These cemeteries are two of the prettiest in the United States, just beautiful, wonderful care. And as of January of this year, then 1,350 veterans and eligible family members have been interred in Milledgeville, and the design work's underway for the Phase 2 project, and the total capacity will be over 50,000 once it's fully developed. And if you haven't visited, you I believe need to, because of the final resting place for our veterans. It just could not be a prettier location and place for them.
What's the eligibility for that?
I'm sorry?
Eligibility for burying there. You said eligible people, that's relatives and whatever. What is that? What does that cover?
Veterans, their spouses, and eligible children. Usually those are children with handicaps or disabilities who are eligible to be interred there. There is no residency requirement, and you do not have to have served in wartime. You only have to be a veteran of the armed forces. And that gets you and your spouse and any eligible
What
children.
would, is that, you got to serve 90 days or what?
I believe that's correct,
Yeah.
yes.
The requirement matches for, it's the same as for the VA National Cemeteries.
Right.
It's a parallel set. Have a very nice ceremonial area. There's the commissioner conducting one of the ceremonies in Milledgeville. Of course, Administration Visitors Center, along with the chapel. Very beautiful committal chapel in both Milledgeville and Glenville. The Glenville Cemetery is located on 42 acres just north of Glenville. Was dedicated in 2007, and so far we've had 192 of those eligible interred in Glenville.
I recently attended a military funeral in Fort Mitchell over in Alabama. I guess a person take the choice of either go to the federal or the state. Is it?
It'd be the choice of the family in that regard, yes. Both chapels, or both cemeteries, have very beautiful chapels, as the commissioner was talking about earlier, with the stained glass windows pointing upward. What I want to mention here, even though they are committed, if you look at the federal side of the house with the committal shelters, they're open air shelters that, of course, are the thinking being to parallel a private burial at a local cemetery where they have their little tent set up. That's pretty much the way it is. But I think what's really wonderful about Georgia is that final ceremony, that committal ceremony. It's conducted in a very good setting and environment. You don't have to worry about the weather. It can be freezing cold, pouring down rain, or whatever. And that final tribute for the veteran and with the family is in a very beautiful, controlled setting, and that is one of a kind. There's no other state in the United States that has this kind of committal chapel. That all comes from Commissioner Wheeler and his push. And me, having been an Army chaplain, that is particularly meaningful to me because of the significance of that final service with the family. To be done in that kind of setting is just, I think, a wonderful thing.
And when my brother died a few years ago in military, I mean he was in the Army before that, and I got the footstone, a headstone, or whatever, and they had a question that said they only give it if you don't have one. Was that put in for poverty reasons? I mean, is something to save money? What's the reason for that question from the VA? They said you can obtain this if you don't have a proper headstone or whatever to be buried with. You ever heard that before?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Well,
they're entitled to a headstone or a marker.
Yeah, we asked for a marker, and they said if you don't already have one, is the question they asked. That kind of stumped me. Okay.
Well, part of the answer may be, and this has changed. Maybe, Dan, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be the case that you take like a private cemetery. If there was already a marker there, then you could not get a headstone. Or if there's a headstone, you couldn't get a marker. But the law changed on that.
Yeah, well, why did they do that, I wonder?
Oh, I guess because they felt like the grave was already properly marked, but there might not be anything there to identify the person as a veteran. That's, I think, is to answer that situation is why VA changed it to where if there is already a regular private headstone there, that a marker can be added to the foot of that grave. That has changed to where that is now possible.
People usually want that extra because it gives his rank and whatever, on the stone.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we're right at the moment we're talking about community cemeteries,
Right.
where that's an
Right.
issue.
Right.
At our cemeteries, that's not an issue because
Yeah.
the only markers that are allowed are
Right.
the ones that are provided by the VA.
I understand.
But now you can get both at this community.
Our Education and Training Division leads the way in the United States, going back not only monetarily, but in terms of education benefits. Georgia is number one in the United States. There are 319 approved education institutions, 964 training establishments, for a total of 1,283. There are currently 8,380 veterans enrolled in the education, 372 in the training, for a total of 8,752 in Georgia that are receiving their benefits. It's our department's website, and that, gentleman, concludes.
Wish you wouldn't show that. I remember that too well.
Right, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uncle Sam, he reached out and got a lot of us.
Uncle Sam needs you.
That concludes our presentation for the day. Any additional questions you may have, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
We pretty well pestered you throughout the ceremony here, but if there's any other questions?
I had one question. A friend of mine has lived all his life in Georgia. He's a veteran, and he's had to go to, I think he went to North Carolina to take care of his mother who's dying. And he told me that he understood that if he stayed away from the state for more than 2 years, he could not be buried in a military cemetery in Georgia when he comes back.
That is not true. There
used to be a 2-year residency requirement for burial at a state veteran cemetery. When we first opened Milledgeville, that was in the original law that enabled the construction and opening of that facility.
Good.
That particular requirement was removed probably around 2005.
Well, that's great news
So
because
that
he's coming
no
home.
longer applies.
Okay, thank you. Y'all are doing a great job. Thank you very much. It's
Thank you.
a great pleasure to me to be with you guys every time you come to visit us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to write a little wrap up to this, to the ones that didn't appear today, is for all of our benefits. If we get questions, you want to tell us, is there different types of question you want us to call, different phone number, or tell us what phone number you want us to call?
If it's related to a VA benefit or claim, then I would say 404-656-2305. That would come.
656. And that's for benefits?
That's any benefit-related question or claim problem.
Okay.
Or problem with our field
that'd
office.
Cover everything then?
Right, that would come to me. If it's dealing with the nursing homes or the cemeteries, what's your 2307, 656-2307 to Dan Pope.
Cemeteries, what else?
Cemeteries, nursing homes.
Okay.
Cemeteries, nursing homes, or budget.
Nursing homes and what else?
Budget.
Budget.
Could I get you to email me that answer you gave me concerning the burial, and I'll just forward it to my friend.
Sure. Not a problem, sir.
Thank you so much.
But we'll be glad to help you or your constituents anytime we can. Just give us a call.
Well, I've always thought that that's what we all should do as legislators, be ready to serve on that. Of course, we are more tuned to it because of our close relationship with you folks. But might see about passing out even further. Do you get a lot of calls from the legislators asking you for help? And is it do you
It's
get more, do you
pretty
get more
sta-
during the session?
More so during the session. We get a pretty steady flow all the time, but when you're in session, it increases, both in terms of calls and emails. So it's
so you feel
try
like
to stay on top of it.
You feel like the information is pretty well out there, then?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I guess you prefer we call the local guy first on claims and so forth?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, you can get it to me. I say my job is to make sure it gets done, and whatever the most expedient way to accomplish that's where we go.
Just as a matter of information, we're doing something next Saturday that I'm always happy to do. There's a group of deployed families at Robins Air Force Base, and we take a Saturday per year, and we take that train from Cordele, and we go across Lake Blackshear and go over to Jimmy Carter's farm, and the president will be there, and he will greet them and congratulate them for their service. And that is, to me, the most fun. There's about 80 members that usually go with us, and it's really worthwhile.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's see. Should we let our vice chairman ask any questions this late here? No. Go ahead.
Good to see you, sir.
Apologize. We had a very titillating transportation meeting. All roads are leading to nowhere in that committee. But Mr. Chairman,
do you have a bill?
we have a bill that we've been working on and going back and working on it again and going back and working on it again. Like I said, all roads are leading to nowhere. But sorry I'm late, and thank you for what you do, Commissioner Wheeler, and all of you here. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
You don't get no questions.
No questions whatsoever.
Where do you take that book there?
Okay. I am down here.
Appreciate it very much. It's always good to meet with you. We have some of my favorite people, and particularly this committee. It's, of course, kind of look on it as half of our committee, I guess. The military is one segment. We had a nice meeting with them. We decided to split it up so that y'all would have more time and they'd have more time. And so we had 2 good meetings this year, and I'm real pleased about that. And we'll be watching the budget to try to be as fair as we can on it. You know the situation with worldwide recession. All of us are familiar with that. And it's one of those times you have to go through. I guess it's tough for some of these youngsters. I was raised in the Great Depression. I guess it can't possibly get that bad. I tell people I broke my arm one time eating breakfast. I fell out of a persimmon tree. What's that?